And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid sycophants in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the big... Nope, I still am yearning to go back home. From the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday, and it is a big Wednesday on Cowboy State Politics. I can't tell you how much fun it is to sit up in the gallery and watch the left start to implode. I mean, it really is something to see. For example, let us begin with a little montage that I put together for you. You're going to enjoy this just as much as I am.
Sound of the unborn baby and hear the heartbeat. That has nothing to do with the medical condition. It is a shaming tool.
I would ask that we keep the government out of my doctor's office, out of my vagina. Abortion medication, particularly at this stage in pregnancy, is safer than pregnancy.
Horse crap.
Exactly, horse crap. The truth is, my friends, that the left in Wyoming really doesn't know how to handle not being in power. Most of the time in the last, 40, 50 years, they've been in control of every lever of power in this state. And now they're not. With the House of Representatives in the hands of Representative Chip Nyman and the Senate, arguably, I'll give it to him, in the hands of Bo Beitman, the Wyoming legislature is decidedly more conservative. But, the House, way, way, way more conservative than the Wyoming Senate. The truth is, we really have a big question mark as far as the Wyoming Senate goes. Yesterday, they killed Bob Ide's ESG bill, and they did it when one of the conservatives was off the floor. Now, remember, we've been told in the media and from people in the Senate that, nope, the Senate's totally conservative and everything is going to go according to plan. Well, when you have redcoats on the floor, you can never really predict what's going to happen. And that was the demise of Senator Bob Ide's ESG bill. Fortunately, there's an ESG bill headed over from the House Bill 80. And by the way, directly after this program, I'm going to publish the episode, today's episode of the Cowboy State Politics podcast. It's a great interview with Wyoming Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman. So look for that right after this program, probably half hour, 45 minutes after this program. I still have to finish putting it together. Also, some program notes before we really get going on the program. As I told you yesterday, we're going to have to shake up the schedule of Cowboy State Politics Live a little bit. My presence has been requested every Friday morning at 7:30. And so, because I can't be, as talented as I am, I really can't be in two places at once. So Fridays, we won't have Cowboy State Politics Live. It'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which means that tomorrow will be Open Line Thursday. I know there's a lot of changes that are happening, but, when you're down here in the Middle Swamp, things are always in flux, and I'll try to keep up with it as best as I can. So for the time being, Cowboy State Politics Live, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And also, I've decided I'm going to start up another channel on the podcast, and this one will be dedicated only to Cowboy State Politics live episodes. So if you missed the live program in the morning, I mean, I know people are really busy and, sometimes you're not able to tune in and listen to it. We'll have a whole nother channel of the podcast to where all of the Cowboy State Politics live episodes will be published, and that way you can just go back and listen to them whenever you like. So I'll be publishing that on all of my social media channels today, and it'll give you another an opportunity to get a lot of the excellent programming that is coming from Cowboy State Politics. On today's program, we're going to talk about a lot of the bills that are heading over from the Wyoming House and the media's reaction to them. And I've got a number of sound bites to play for you. And mainly the one I'm most excited about is the horse crap one. That one was beautiful. Now, longtime listeners of Cowboy State Politics will remember when Representative Chip Nyman was a freshman in the House of Representatives, and they were debating a bill, and I don't really remember what the bill was, but I know the topic of conversation on the floor was about manure. I know. The weirdest topics come up in the Wyoming legislature. But anyway, Representative Chip Nyman was up at the podium, and he slipped, and he referred to manure as crap. Then Redcoat Speaker of the House, Eric Barlow, gavelled him down and forced him to apologize to the body. Now, it really wasn't that big a deal, except, of course, that he made a conservative get up at the podium. Now, in the same legislative session, Representative Lloyd Larson said the word damn on the floor. He wasn't gavelled down at all. Well, yesterday afternoon, actually, Representative Lloyd Larson slipped up in his own and usual way. And here's what you're seeing. The left in Wyoming, they really don't know how to deal with not being in power. And it's completely understandable because they've been in power for like 40 years. And now they can't just push their agenda on the floor of the House of Representatives or the Senate for that matter, in whatever way that they want to. They have to go through the conservatives. And pretty much every vote is like 37-24, 36-25, which is, interestingly enough, almost the exact opposite of what it was last year. If you paid attention to last year's legislative session, the result of just about every vote was 36 liberals, 26 conservatives. It's not that case anymore. It's absolutely the reverse. Well, here's what was happening on the floor when Representative Lloyd Larson slipped on his own cow pie. The amendment they were discussing, because yesterday was the capital construction bill, and then pretty soon, I think on Friday, they're going to get into the supplemental budget. But anyway, they were talking about an amendment to fix a situation that's happening down around Rock Springs. Lloyd Larson had offered an amendment, and the conservatives weren't going for it. So here's what happened. Take a listen to this and just giggle with glee as I did when I heard it.
When you ask those old timers there, where do you live? They say, well, do you know where number 19 was or whatever? It's these mines because that's where they live. But then
What's your point?
We're getting well off the topic here, giving a history lesson to the community. We really just need to know why there's a request for these funds. And that doesn't need to go back to the early 1900s, late 1800s.
Thank you. Let's please stay on topic.
Horse crap.
Representative Larson.
Well,
Point of order.
I apologize for that. I shouldn't have said that. But if
You're right. You shouldn't have said that. Completely breaking all decorum. Now, had it been Eric Barlow that was in control of the House of Representatives, Redcoat Eric Barlow or Redcoat Chi-Com Sam, he probably wouldn't have been even gavelled down. It would have been, hey, let's kind of rein this in a little bit. But because it was Representative J.T. Larson, who was the chairman of Committee of the Whole yesterday, the only thing you really heard was Representative Larson. But what that shows you is the utter frustration that is building with the Redcoats in the House of Representatives. The only weapon that they have left that they can use on the floor is to delay, obstruct, and to completely talk a bill to death, to filibuster it into oblivion. That's the only thing that they've got left, and they don't like it. So anyway, my friends, it fills me with glee to watch them flail around in their absolute lack of power. And so that is where we're going to begin this morning in the Wyoming Turkey Vulture. The Wyoming Tribune Eagle. An article entitled Wyoming Freedom Caucus Stacked Committee Slashes $235 million from the budget from Magpie Mullet. Now, hold on just a second. Let's just talk about the title for a second. Wyoming Freedom Caucus Stacked Committee. Of course, Magpie Mullet is referring to the Appropriations Committee. But let's go back in our Wayback Machine and talk about the Appropriations Committee of prior years. Last year, there wasn't a single conservative on the Appropriations Committee because the Redcoats were in power. It was stacked with Dave Zwanitzer, Bill Henderson, Trey Sherwood, Tom Walters, Lloyd Larson, Bob Nicholas. Not a single conservative among them. And now Magpie Mullet is saying, well, it's a Wyoming Freedom Caucus stacked committee. Of course it is, because they are the ones that are in power. So this isn't anything new. Anybody who's, any party who's going to be in power in the legislature, if they were going to have those folks on the most powerful committee. Let's get to the article. And I quote, a legislative panel on Tuesday, that's the Appropriations Committee, advanced the state's supplemental budget, but not before slashing roughly $235 million from Governor Mark Gordon's recommendations via cuts to wildfire recovery, energy projects, emergency funds for local governments, and reimbursement rates for maternity and mental health care. Keep in mind, though, it was Governor Mark Gordon himself in his letter that accompanied the supplemental budget that he said supplemental budgets are only for emergencies and unforeseen circumstances. So the Appropriations Committee is holding them to it. Holding Governor Gordon to it, that is, to say that the only thing that's going to go through are unforeseen things and emergencies, which does not include a $36 million shooting range at the Wyoming Law Enforcement Academy. Now, it was admitted on the floor by Representative Ken Pendergraft that it's true. The shooting range that they have at the Law Enforcement Academy isn't quite adequate for what they want to do. But it doesn't necessitate $36 million, nor is that an emergency, nor is that an unforeseen circumstance. If the governor wanted a $36 million shooting range, he should have included it in his budget last year because Wyoming operates on a biennial budget. We don't pass a budget every single year. It's for 2 years. And then in the off year, there's a supplemental budget to cover things that we didn't know were going to happen. Back to the article. The cuts were mostly unsurprising. Wyoming Freedom Caucus members and their allies now comprise the majority of the Wyoming's legislature's Joint Appropriations Committee, and the group has long promised to dramatically decrease spending levels. The reductions, however, set the stage for a potential showdown between the legislative and executive branches. The committee set the tone early, using its first meeting of the 2025 general session to effectively override many of Governor Mark Gordon's previous line item vetoes to the existing budget by adding the crossed-out language back into the supplemental fiscal plan. In even-numbered years, lawmakers craft the state's upcoming 2-year budget, also known as a biennium budget. In odd-numbered years, as they are doing right now, lawmakers work on the supplemental budget, which, as the name implies, supplements the financial plan already in effect. For both budget processes, lawmakers begin by considering recommendations from the governor. That's how the committee spent its time last week. And not without hiccups. Now, of course, Magpie Mullet is going to report on anything that the conservatives do that she views as a misstep or a hiccup or a problem or anything that the media, specifically the Turkey Vulture, can target as these conservatives don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to govern. Because, of course, that was the narrative that Chicom Sam, former Redcoat Speaker of the House, Redcoat Eric Barlow and Ogden Driscoll and all of the Redcoats use. Conservatives don't know how to govern. That's why you have to elect us. Well, the truth is that conservatives do know how to govern. And if you look at the House of Representatives, generally speaking, I would argue that it's being run a little bit looser than it has been in past sessions. There have been several occasions where Redcoats Julie Jarvis and Elisa Campbell, I think it's pronounced Elisa, I got confirmation of that. Never mind. But where points of order have been called on them, and Lloyd Larson too, and Steve Harshman, to where they weren't sticking to an amendment or to the topic at hand. And there's been crosstalk that's kind of been allowed, though a couple of times Speaker Nyman has kind of tried to rein that in a little bit and say, hey, direct all of your comments to the chair. So while I would argue that the House is being run a little bit looser than I would like, it's still being run fair. Now, an interesting point of note, Representative Nyman asked all of the members of the House to give him a list of the 3 bills that they would like to see come to the floor, the 3 bills that were priorities for them. And he tried to get those on the schedule. That's not something that has happened in previous sessions. Many representatives have noticed, specifically Democrat Carly Provenza, when I was standing right there. She said, well, that's never happened before. Why do you want 3 bills? And Speaker Nyman just replied, I want to know the bills that you want to see on the floor, because the House of Representatives is to be run fairly, which is not how it's been operated for a really long time. The Redcoats have been in power, and like I noted in a previous, this is a great example, like I noted in a previous episode about Eric Barlow. Every time that he has been a chairman or if he's been the Speaker of the House, he took pro-life bills and he stuffed them in his drawer. To his credit, he let the trigger bill go through, but the vast majority of other bills, they went straight to his drawer. Similarly, with Albert Sommers, bills that he didn't like, they went in his drawer too. He didn't bring them out to the floor. And that's why in the 2 previous sessions, we saw a lot of motions to try to challenge or override the decision of the chair and bring those bills to the floor. I think all of them failed. But, and while I would say that there probably are going to end up being bills in Speaker Nyman's drawer also, it's still pretty clear that the House is being run fairly. Back to the article. Quote, in the time since lawmakers adopted the existing budget, the Appropriations Committee has tilted farther to the right. Many of its members are also new to the work of crafting and amending the state's budget, particularly on the House side. That was evidenced when the committee, on more than one occasion, had to reconsider a vote when members voiced confusion over what they had just approved or rejected. At one point, Representative Bill Alamand, a Midwest Republican, voted both for and against his own motion. I voted twice. I'm sorry, he said. So what Magpie Mullet is trying to do, and what the media is trying to do in general, is to paint the conservatives into a corner that they don't know what they're doing. But if you listen to the debate on the floor yesterday, you could see that they very much had everything well in hand. But the narrative of the Wyoming media is to try to keep their liberal pals in power. And, the whole idea is to say conservatives don't know what they're doing. It's a setup for the next election, and you can continue. You're probably going to see the same drumbeat continue. We'll have more when we come back from the break. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's me behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, blasting through you through the interwebs. I'm bringing you Wyoming's most listened to political program. Now, before the break, I was telling you about an article in the Wyoming Turkey Vulture that was originally printed or published by Wildpile, Magpie Mullet, and she's trying to do everything that she can to deride, to besmirch everything that the House Appropriations Committee is doing. One more comment from her article, and I quote, "The committee took aim at the governor's energy matching fund, striking about $100 million from the program, which is intended to leverage private and federal funds for energy projects, such as carbon capture. There's a number of reasons why the House Appropriations Committee did away with this. First of all, conservatives don't believe in picking winners and losers, taking taxpayer dollars and helping every Tom, Dick, and Harry with their own personal energy project. Now, if you remember, in the last budget, Governor Gordon was given $350 million to pretty much do whatever he wanted with it. And it's pretty much come to an end. Secondarily, the governor's energy projects are not an emergency or an unforeseen circumstance, so there's no reason why they should be in the supplemental budget. And I quote, "Last year, the funds landed on the chopping block when lawmakers pushed back on Gordon's support for energy projects that aim to reduce carbon emissions. Opponents, and there's a big reason why they pushed back on it. Don't forget that Governor Gordon is the guy that went to Harvard University and said this."
And I know what's happening on the environmental side. We've had several glaciers that have been delisted as glaciers in the West. It is clear that we have a warming climate. It is clear that carbon dioxide is a major contributor to that challenge. There's an urgency to addressing this issue. And it isn't going to be solved only by turning off fossil fuels.
Don't ever forget. Stop. Don't ever forget that Governor Gordon said that it's not going to be solved only by turning off fossil fuels, which kind of means that it does include turning off fossil fuels. My point being, my friends, that the governor has a green agenda, and he's made no bones about that. And when the liberals were in power, they pretty much empowered him to do whatever he wanted to, give him $350 million. Well, the current House Appropriations Committee is not going to have any of that. Let's see here. Anything else? No, I'm pretty much done with this. But the point being is the Wyoming media really doesn't want anything to do with the conservative Republicans' agenda in the House, and they're going to print every single article they possibly can to make it seem like conservatives don't have any idea what they're doing. Moving on, there was a bill, and this one, you should see this one coming from the Democrats and the Redcoats, a bill to remove party affiliation from county offices. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, it couldn't be that the vast majority of county commissioners in the state of Wyoming are not conservatives. And we only need one piece of evidence to prove that to you. Their new chairman, who was just elected, is a Democrat. That's right, my friends. The vast majority of county commissioners elected in this state run as Republicans, and they elected a Democrat as their chairman. Interestingly enough, she's a Democrat. She's a Democrat county commissioner from Teton County. She was the only person that was nominated in that election. The rest of those Republicans, and if you hear them talk to their constituents, they are the most conservative people that you have ever seen. They didn't even bother to nominate a Republican to be the chairman. Not one. So the question is, why would they push a bill? And it's admittedly, it's a Democrat that pushed this bill. But why, riddle me this, riddle me that. Why would they want to remove party affiliation from county offices? Well, it makes it easier for a liberal to get in there. So they don't have to campaign as a Republican, so they don't have to be questioned about their conservative credentials. Of course, they don't want party affiliation on county offices. This one is another one from the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, and I quote, "A measure to remove party affiliation from many county offices failed in the House committee Tuesday morning. In a 6-1 vote, representatives of the House Appropriations Committee voted down House Bill 236, County Officials Nonpartisan Elections. The bill's co-sponsor, Democrat Representative Ken Chestik from Laramie, said the bill would have removed party affiliation from offices of the county clerk, county treasurer, county assessor, county coroner, sheriff, county and prosecuting attorney, district attorney, and the clerk of district court. Let's start where we all agree, Chestik said to the committee, which included 6 Republicans and 1 Democrat. I think all of us in this room and in the legislature want to have engaged citizens. We want to build strong communities, and that means less partisanship and more decisions based on merit. Chestik said that if passed, House Bill 236 would leave party affiliation attached to the office of county commissioner. Okay, so I was wrong about that. So party affiliation stays with the county commissioner, but the rest of the county offices, no, we're going to do away with that. But no other county office. Chestik said that all other county offices would be nominated and elected in a nonpartisan way. The truth is, my friends, that no race is nonpartisan. Politics being what they are, voters need to know which candidate is more to the left and which candidate is more to the right. And if you listen to the rhetoric of any of the offices, it is very clear which candidate is in which party. And the only reason why Ken Chestik wants to remove this from all the rest of the county offices is so that it's easier for a Democrat to get in there. Because in Wyoming, if you're a Democrat, it is decidedly harder to get elected in the vast majority of the state. Now, that's barring, of course, Teton County and Sweetwater County. And there's a couple other places, Natrona probably, and Laramie. Laramie County and Albany County, it would probably be easier for a Democrat to get elected there, simply because they're bigger towns. Generally speaking, the larger the town, the more liberal it is. Let's see here. Chestik continues. That only makes sense. None of these offices have any political valence to them. They are not political. Yes, they are. All of those are political, with the exception of the county clerk, and I'll explain that in just a second. The work that's being done is completely apolitical, Chestik said. The county clerk, for example, runs elections, and any office needs to be nonpartisan. It should be the clerk. On this point, I agree with Representative Ken Chestik. I know, stop the presses, that I actually agree with the Democrat, but he's right on this point. I don't really care if the county clerk is a Democrat or if they're a Republican, so long as they do the work of that office in a nonpartisan way. If they just run the election fairly, I don't think that it really matters if you're a Democrat or Republican. In Wyoming, I think most Democrats, well, I don't know, some Democrats want a fair election. But the truth is, in the office of the county clerk, I happen to agree with Ken Chestik. I don't think you really need, I don't think it really matters all that much if you have a Democrat or Republican, so long as things are run fairly. Now, all of that being said, the Democrats are the ones that have a history of trying to manipulate elections and I'm talking more on nationally speaking, but they are the ones that tend to try to put their fingers on the scales in just about every election. Now, there have been a number of complaints in Wyoming of different things that happened in an election. I seriously question whether the clerk in Weston County is a Republican or a Democrat. I think, and if you remember, you should go back and listen to that episode. In fact, I should go back and find that for you, because I actually called her and interviewed her. And she was pretty much absolutely non-conciliatory at all. In fact, she didn't accept any responsibility for what happened in that election. And the truth is, she really screwed up. So there are problems across the state. But I guess as a general rule, as long as the clerk is fair, I'm okay with it. Representative Ken Pendergraft of Sheridan asked Chestik if he thought party affiliation might affect the way county administrators approach the budget. Chestik said that he didn't think it would. Oh, I think it would. Republicans and conservatives have a very different view of the role of government and the role and the way in which public funds are spent. And I think all you need to do is look at the media coverage of the Appropriations Committee, and you can see exactly how Democrats approach the budget. Spend more money, more government programs, more money to education, more money to the Department of Health. In fact, as much money as we could possibly ever spend. Yes, Democrats and Republicans approach their budgetary things. Oh, again, I hit the wrong button. Approach their approach their budgets in a very, very different way. Generally speaking, Republicans, conservative Republicans, think that the role of government is to be small, that is not to be involved in just about everything, that you only have a couple of jobs in government, streets, that might be a good thing, police, fire, water, sewer, all of the infrastructure, and you probably need to administer the town or county a little bit. But beyond that, the government really doesn't have any role in all of these things. So yes, there would be a big difference. Let's see here. Representative Bill Alamand of Midwest asked if removing party affiliation would decrease transparency in elections. Chestick replied, quote, that I think it actually increases transparency because using party affiliation as a proxy for how you will do the job is misleading. Representative Trey Sherwood pointed out that commissioners set a county's budget and that bill retained party affiliation for them. Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray spoke out against the bill, saying that all of the offices listed in the bill include a value judgment that voters could understand through party affiliation. Quote, the transparency mechanism of individuals identifying their parties goes away, Gray said. Mandy Weaver, who identified as a constituent of Senator Ed Cooper, that's Second Amendment warrior Ed Cooper. He's the guy that sponsored the enhanced concealed carry permit bill over in the Senate. I don't even know if that one's going to see the light of day. We'll have to see. But anyway, he spoke in favor of the bill via Zoom. Weaver said that she was proud Cooper was listed as a co-sponsor on the bill. Quote, in my lifetime, I've watched as partisanship has completely changed the state that I love, sowing division and driving a wedge between neighbors, Weaver said. The truth is that Wyoming elections have always become partisan. And while I don't like to quote him very often, former Senator Alan Simpson said that in Wyoming, everything is political, except for politics. Politics, that's personal. And if you read the history of Wyoming, all of this bullcrap about, we're so divisive and we're so divided, it's never been so contentious, that's a load of horse crap. As Lloyd Larson would say, I've got to fix that soundbite so it's on my board. Horse crap. But anyway, that bill died as it should have, and it's never going to see the light of day again. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, it'll probably be brought again, but this session, it's dead and buried. So let's see here. We're down at the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Carly Provenza, a Democrat. She's got an op-ed in the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, the Wyoming Turkey Vulture. Yeah, the conservatives' 5 and dime plan has failed. Yeah, I know it doesn't look that way, but hey, everything's different with Carly. Back in a minute. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, Facebook, X, Rumble, pretty much everywhere. Make sure that you don't miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast today. It is an interview with Wyoming Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman. It's a great interview, and you definitely don't want to miss it. That'll be published just shortly after this program, probably like 45 minutes afterwards. Also, to give you kind of some more heads up on some programming notes, don't forget that Cowboy State Politics Live will now be Tuesday through Thursday. On Friday, I've got to be at the Capitol for a meeting every Friday morning, so can't really be in two places at once. Also, later on today, I'm going to set up the additional channel on the Cowboy State Politics podcast where you can get all of the Cowboy State Politics Live episodes, and we'll start with today's episode. Now, Carly Provenza. Just love her. One of the few Democrats in the House of Representatives. Oh, and maybe we should go back to see exactly what Carly was saying yesterday before we talk about how she thinks the 5 and dime plan, failed. Let me just play the montage from the beginning of the show. You can hear what Carly has to say.
Sound of the unborn baby and hear the heartbeat.
That's
that has
Elisa
nothing
Campbell.
to do with the medical condition. It is a shaming tool.
I would ask that we keep the
There's
government
Carly.
out of my doctor's office, out of my vagina. Abortion medication, particularly at this stage in pregnancy, is safer than pregnancy.
Horse crap.
Horse crap. So there you heard Carly Provenza and the crazy stuff that she was saying on the floor of the House of Representatives. But she's got a piece in the Wyoming Turkey Vulture entitled "The Freedom Caucus 5 and Dime Plan Has Failed." And I quote, "I was surprised after I returned home from the Capitol on Friday to find Wyoming news outlets reporting that the Freedom Caucus had succeeded in its 5 and dime plan to pass 5 major bills through the House of Representatives in 10 days. Actually, they got it done in 8 days, and all of their bills went through pretty much unamended. I would count that as a victory." "This simply is not true," said Provenza, "unless you count passing a piece of legislation that does nothing. One of the 5 major bills the Freedom Caucus hoped to pass was a bill prohibiting woke investments by the state." That's House Bill 80, the ESG bill that I specifically asked Speaker of the House Chip Nyman about. He goes into detail how it's pretty much the exact same thing that we've been doing the last 2 years. And if you want to know what our investments are going to look like after the bill's passage, just look back at how they performed the last 2 years, and that'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. "Not so," says Carly Provenza. "The bill," quote, "the bill that was meant to achieve this, House Bill 80, eventually did pass the House, but it was amended so much that it just upholds the status quo." That's precisely the point of how the Wyoming Treasurer's Office does business today, which includes investing in companies with a woke agenda. Okay, so the investment policy essentially says that investments are to be without politics. We're not going to invest considering left or right politics. That's our position. So we're not going to say, well, because this company supports green energy, we're going to invest in them, or because this particular fund over here rejects everything that's woke, we're going to invest in them. The investment policy has to be absolutely without politics, and that's how we've been operating for the last 2 years. Quote, "In other words, this major 5 and dime Freedom Caucus pill, the pillar of the 5 and dime plan, can become law, and Wyoming will go right ahead investing in woke companies. For the Freedom Caucus to claim that it has somehow stopped woke investments is dishonest. So is the claim that its 5 and dime plan was a success." Actually, Carly's wrong because, Wyoming has not set out to invest in pro-ESG companies or anti-ESG companies or anything. It's the return on investment that's important. So all of the articles that have been published in the Wyoming press, there was one in the Buffalo Bull Crap that I saw, that were going to cost the state billions of dollars. I think they said like $5 billion or something. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's see here. What else does she have to say? Quote, "House Bill 80 was meant to prohibit the Treasurer's Office from investing in any of the state's money in woke companies that allow ESG. That's not true at all. The whole thing is to be completely nonpartisan. ESG has become a favorite boogeyman of national groups in Washington, D.C. based State Freedom Caucus network." On and on and on. I really just can't handle any more of Carly Provenza. And speaking of interviews and, different legislators talking in the media. And this next part is not about Senator Bo Biden. It is about Trotsky Wolfson and his hard-hitting interview. Now, the other day, Trotsky had an interview with Senator Bo Biden, the president of the Wyoming Senate, and he given the opportunity, you would think that Trotsky would ask some hard-hitting questions. But let me just play for you the most hard-hitting question coming from the cow pie. This one, I know, hold on to your seats, grab the duct tape, your head might explode. And this is the level of journalism that is coming from the cow pie. Take a listen to this one.
Could you explain for us kind of what is the big difference that you see between the Senate and the House? I know you were mentioning earlier today how the Senate has been moving at a much quicker pace this session. What are, for the average layman, what is the big differences between these two chambers?
Okay. So could you come up with a more benign question? I really don't know what Trotsky's motivation was for asking this dumb, ridiculous question, but it really doesn't tell you anything more. And I'm going to play the answer, Bo Biden's answer here in just a second. But it doesn't tell you anything about his agenda, what the Senate is trying to do, what his priorities are. If you compare that question to the podcast that I'm going to publish after this program, you'll clearly see the difference. Where I was interested in what Speaker of the House Chip Nyman wants to see accomplished, what his priorities are, what he thinks. Not just some benign question of, what's the difference really between the Senate and the House. Talk about sophomoric journalism, but here's Bo Biteman's answer. And I mean, it's a completely open-ended question. He could have answered in any way. And I think that given the question that was asked, Senator Biteman absolutely answered it the way that he should have. Not put anything at risk, don't throw anything out there. The question wasn't directed at anything specific, so it's pretty much just an open field. He could say anything that he wanted. But here's what he said.
I think right now you're seeing the difference is we have a lot more experienced members and we don't have as much turnover. So we have a lot of guys in there that have been there a really long time, and that has a kind of a calming effect on things. You have people that are, been there, done that. I put people in committee chairmanships that are experienced for a reason to be able to hit the ground running. So on day one, we have experienced people running committees. Your leadership team is capable of making sure everything's running smoothly. And that's
okay. All right. So the one part that I would disagree with Senator Biteman on is the motivation behind putting those folks in committee chairmanships. If you listen to Cowboy State Politics, I've been very critical of all of the committee chairmanships in the Senate. And while it's true that the people that he did put in charge of committees are experienced, they have been there for a really long time, that's not the main thing that you should watch on it. And I really haven't seen anything thus far come out of committees. Like I said, the Senate's kind of a big question mark. We'll know more at crossover when all of those five and dime plans hit the Senate. But really, the problem with the committee chairmanships is that 7 out of 10 of them almost, and if you count appropriations, it's kind of split, but definitely 7 out of 10 of the committee chairmanships are manned by liberals. For example, Senator Nancy Case. He's in charge of corporations. And Senator Case is also the guy, and I have to go back and watch the video, but he's the guy in the Senate that pretty much killed Senator Bob Ide's ESG bill yesterday. So anyway, 7 of the 10 committees manned by liberals. Yes, Bo Biteman's correct. They are experienced. Many of them have been chairman before. So in that respect, yep, he's absolutely right. But what he's not talking about is who those folks are and what their political affiliation is, what they're likely to do in committee. But again, like I said, there's a big question mark what's going to happen there because I haven't seen anything controversial yet. Who knows? I might be completely wrong, but I'm not wrong very often. So let's continue with what Senator Biteman says.
Been our goal from day one. And we focus on, I think we try to pride ourselves more on civility and focus on not attacking each other and attacking the other body down the hall, and just put our egos aside and just get to work.
Okay. Yeah. Put our egos aside, focus on civility. The only thing that gives me great pause with that answer is that when the Democrats say civility, when the Democrats and the redcoats say civility, that's code word for do it our way. Compromise with us. Let's not have any controversy on the floor. Let's just continue doing things the way that we've been doing. And I really haven't seen too much of that. And again, I'll just keep going back to, we don't really know what the Senate's going to do. There hasn't been a lot of controversy out of there yet. But, you never know. Sparks may fly. There's a couple of contentious gun bills that are coming up. I'll have more about that on the program. Probably do a whole podcast about it because there's a bunch of lies that are being thrown around. And most of them are coming from the folks that are in the Senate. Anyway, so that's Bo Beitman and Trotsky's hard-hitting question. Given the opportunity, probably should have asked something a little bit better. Well, let's talk about some national news. We've got about 15 minutes left in the program. From the pages of the old gray lady, the New York Times, a piece entitled, "Trump Frustrates Democrats with His Flood the Zone Strategy." And I quote, and this piece is actually coming from Breitbart, but they're talking about a piece from the New York Times. The New York Times reports that President Donald Trump's strategy of overwhelming Democrats with hundreds of executive orders and actions in the first days of his second presidency is working and frustrating the opposition. The flood the zone strategy was articulated by former White House advisor and former Breitbart News executive chairman Steve Bannon. It was also reflected by the author's 2024 book, The Agenda, What Trump Should Do in His First 100 Days. This author wrote, quote, "The agenda is ambitious, as well it should be. It is not a wish list of policies, but rather a program of action. I've designed it that way because Trump will have an unusually strong mandate for sweeping change. But that energy needs to be channeled. Beyond personal revenge into specific actions, the opposition can be expected to challenge all of them in court. Forum shopping in the friendliest liberal jurisdictions, seeking nationwide injunctions and to stop the Trump train in its tracks." They're not going to be able to do that. That's just not going to happen. Trump is moving at such a speed with his agenda that the Democrats really have no idea what's happening. They are being overwhelmed, as they should be. And just think about it, right? Trump has had 4 years to plan this whole thing out, and he's executing on his agenda. He knows exactly who he's going to what he's going to do, who he's going to get rid of. And I think what you're seeing day after day is a new part of his agenda just being pushed forward. Now, the article continues, quote, "The flood has had its intended disorienting effect. How can Democrats fight back when they can't catch their breath? It's been overwhelming sensory overload," said Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, the top Democrat in the House Judiciary Committee. The Times also credits Trump advisor and White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller with the strategy. "Democrats are hoping that Trump will make mistakes and hope to capitalize on them when he does. But for now, they're scrambling to find enough lawyers and lawsuits to slow down the fastest start in presidential history." Now, Chris, and this conversation continues on the least watched Chris Cuomo program. Now, remember Chris Cuomo? He's the guy that was on CNN that got kicked off, and we didn't see much of him. A radical Democrat. He's the brother of Andrew Cuomo. And so, anyway, he was interviewing a Democrat. And it was a shocking and completely unexpected moment of honesty from a member of the Democrat Party. Now, this clip is kind of long, but it's worth listening to. So let's give it a listen.
Establish our credibility on a number of issues. It's not going to be enough, even if it is strategic and tactical and smart, to criticize what Donald Trump does. I mean, we have to do that, and we have to do it intelligently. It's just not going to be enough because we don't have the credibility that we need on issues like immigration, like DEI, dealing with racism and discrimination, like the economy. I think we need to spend more time reestablishing our own credibility, not just bashing on what Trump does.
Well, it depends on who we is. I mean, I agree with you about Schumer.
Okay, hold on just a second. So who you heard from was Democrat Representative Smith. And this was brought to my attention in a piece in Breitbart, and it starts out this way. On Tuesday's broadcast of News Nation's Cuomo, Representative Adam Smith, great name for a legislator, bad name for a Democrat, stated that Democrats lack credibility on the economy because we can't build housing, in part because of the rules, all the regulations, all of the incompetence of Democratic governance. Smith began by saying the part that you just saw, my party needs to reestablish our credibility in a number of issues, blah, blah, blah. Let's fast forward here because I want to get to a piece another thing that happened on the floor that I just remembered from yesterday.
State legislators meeting with the governor, meeting with other key legislators and saying, look, if we govern well, that's the best thing we can do to counter Trump. So what are we doing about crime, about homelessness, about drug abuse, about affordable housing? I spent a lot of time today talking about affordable housing. I mean, this is a core progressive idea, to your point, about what working class, blue collar Democrats like your father, and I like to think me, want to work on. Making housing affordable. But we can't build housing in part because of all the rules, all the regulations, all of the incompetence of Democratic governance.
There you go. It's all because of the incompetence of Democratic governance. And that's exactly where the Democrat Party is right now. They are in complete disarray. They had no chance of winning the presidential election, even though they lied to the entire country. But through polling, statistics, crime statistics, you name it, they couldn't pull it off because, my friends, the American people are sick of the Democrat Party, as they should be. And that is analogous to how Wyoming voters have treated the radical redcoats in the Republican Party. In Wyoming, we have the same problem with the Democrats, except they're hiding in the Republican Party. Now, let me give you a great example. And I know that on a number of episodes, I've been hammering Representative Elisa Campbell pretty hard, but she deserves it. Representative Campbell goes to the microphone and reveals just about every single day how she is not even close to a Republican. All day yesterday and the day before, she was at the microphone trying to kill the education bills. Before that, it was trying to kill the gun bill, the ban on gun-free zones. And so she just keeps giving me material, and I just have to keep reporting on it. And so let's just take a listen to this. Now, this one is interesting because yesterday in the House and Committee of the Whole, there was 2 pro-life bills that came up. Listen to what Elisa Campbell said. Here you go.
I don't think any of us wants to be in a position when we very much are pro-life and then...
Okay, so she says we're all very much pro-life and we don't want to be in a position. So there's the first claim. I'm 100% pro-life. Listen to what she says next.
Having to explain, and how do we argue this? When we say this shall happen, to create an opportunity to view the active ultrasound of the unborn baby and hear the heartbeat, that has nothing to do with the medical condition. It is a shaming tool.
It's a shaming tool to ask a mother to look at an ultrasound of her unborn baby. Now, remember in the beginning, and that's the same speech, right? I just kind of edited out the middle part so we could make it a little bit easier to digest on the program. But she starts out saying, we're all pro-life. Look at me. I'm pro-life. I'm a mother. Of course I'm pro-life. And then in the end, she says that asking a woman to look at an ultrasound before killing her baby, well, that's a shaming measure. That's just shaming. Well, you can't have it both ways, Elisa Campbell. You're either pro-life or you're not. But she's not alone on the floor of the House of Representatives. I didn't keep a tally of who voted against it. Perhaps I should go back and watch the video and listen to the audio. I should be able to pick out who voted against it. But the point is, there's a lot of legislators down there that got elected telling their voters that they're a conservative Republican. And in Elisa Campbell's case, yeah, she's not. But the truth is that Elisa Campbell is a Democrat that is hiding in the Republican Party. And it's every single day she reveals herself more and more and more of who she is, similar to her pal Julie Jarvis. That those two are a constant source of material, and there's no end to their liberalism. We've only got about 6 minutes left in the program. One of the favorite guys during the Trump administration that was constantly going at him was Jim Acosta. Well, it turns out he's kind of out of a job. Evidently, he was given an offer. Look, you can move to late night or you can move on, whichever the case may be. Evidently, the Communist News Network is trying to make some changes. From Breitbart, and I quote, Jim Acosta, who assumed the role of the worst anchor in America after Keith Olbermann disappeared, announced on far left CNN Tuesday that he was leaving the fake news network entirely. There had been rumors that the preening peacock with the bad dye job would be moved to midnights, Apparently, he decided to go home and take his ego with him, because everything Jim Acosta says makes more sense when it comes after the words, "Dear Diary, I give you." Dear Diary, don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope. Here is what Democrat anchor from the Communist News Network had to say. Listen.
Just wanted to end today's show by thanking all of the wonderful people who work behind the scenes at this network. You may have seen some reports about me and the show, and after giving all of this some careful consideration and weighing an alternative time slot CNN offered me, I've decided to move on. I am grateful to CNN for the nearly 18 years I've spent here doing the news. People often ask me if the highlight of my career at CNN was at the White House covering Donald Trump. Actually,
you know, all these anchors that leave, they have to have their final show and get one more stab at the stake, one more chance to get their point in. But I think we all remember Jim Acosta from Trump's first administration. This is the Jim Acosta that we will all remember and that CNN probably is trying to forget about.
your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
Right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
That's when they took the microphone from him. But that's going to be the legacy of CNN and Jim Acosta. And it's the part of the media that all of us remember from the first Trump administration, that at every opportunity they tried to make him seem like he was, unable to run the country, that he was a buffoon, and they tried their very best to do that. It is very, very, and this is why I ended the program with this. It is very, very similar to what the Democrats and the Wyoming media are doing in Wyoming. In every case, they're trying with everything that they can do to make it seem as though the Freedom Caucus and the conservatives who are in power in Wyoming don't know how to run the state, that they don't know how to govern, that they're going to screw up everything, that it's going to implode, that puppies are going to die and kitties are going to bleed from the nose. At least that's what we've heard from the floor of the House of Representatives lately. And it's also the media that's been helping them. You see, the media in Wyoming almost exclusively is absolutely liberal. I mean, just about every day in every paper, on the Cowboy, the pages of the Red Star, there are numerous examples of how the media in Wyoming is trying everything they can do to make the conservatives in the House of Representatives seem like they don't know what they're doing. It's pretty much the exact same thing that you're seeing on the national scene with President Donald Trump. And the truth is, the media has been in control for so long that they don't know what they're going to do when they don't have any more power. Well, the truth is, my friends, in the last election, conservatives proved that the media doesn't have the power that they did before, that there are so many new voices, there's so much alternate media, so much alternate news, that Americans just don't have to listen to the Communist News Network or PMSNBC or ABC or any of them. There's enough alternative media to consume that there's really no reason to pay attention to these big networks anymore. They've lost any of the power that they have. And by the way, the Wyoming media is also losing all of the power that they have. Well, my friends, we've burned through another busy broadcast hour on the program. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. Also, keep your eyes peeled for the new channel I'm going to start with all of the Cowboy State Politics live episodes. That way you can go back and listen to all of the episodes that we have that have been published. But for now, from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.